welcome back to Movie Short. Today I'm going to describe the movie cover, a 2020 Polish slasher film called Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. I hope you enjoy it. Let's start. Spoilers. A postman paddles his bike down the road to arrive at a house and miss a Polish forest. Inside the house, a woman is washing bloody clothes on a battered board in a tub with loud music playing in the house. A photo of twin boys can be seen hanging on a wall in the house. As the postman knocks on the door, the melody drowns the sound of knocking and the woman is unable to hear it. The postman knocked several times but no one answers. He hears some strange sounds that follows them around the house. He finds a passageway to the cellar of the house, which is blocked by a small wooden door. The postman forcefully pulls the door open, thinking someone might be trapped or held hostage down there because of the weird groaning sounds he can hear from the inside of the cellar. He then reaches his hand down to the cellar in the dark, telling whoever was inside to climb up with his help, and no one answers from the basement. Instead, groaning sounds continue to be heard from down there. The postman turns to get some help but is instead dragged down into the cellar by an unseen creature. 30 years later, a bus fully loaded with teens drive through the thick Polish forest, disappearing under the thick tree canopy towards the Adrenaline Office trekking camp. This camp is a place where teens addicted to their electronic devices are brought to spend some time away from the electronics. After arriving at the camp, the kids start getting out of the bus and hand all their electronic devices to the instructor at the camp. All the teens are then gathered at a spot and a man comes to address them. The man tells them that they are able to get out of the world of the internet for a few days and enjoy the beauty of nature and the companionship of other teens. He tells them not to treat their days at camp like a punishment, but a holiday where they will have new adventures. The teens are placed in the group via number system. Counselors are then given responsibility of each group. The main protagonist Zoisa ends up in a group with the counselor Isa for a 3-day hike along with 3 other teens called Julik, Daniel, Analia and Bartek. The house with the growling creature is then shown again. The woman, who is now old, opens the cellar door and drags a dead deer to the cellar. While trying to throw it in, her foot slips and she falls inside. The creature kills her in a gigantic sickly hand, takes the keys to the creature's chains from her, unlocking his chains, getting free for the very first time in all these years. Heavy feet are then seen climb up the stairs of the cellar. The teens start their trekking trip with their counselors while walking. Bartek starts messing with Daniel, who then pushes him off a small drop on the trail, causing him to get a gash on his leg. Isa bandages his leg and they continue walking ahead. During the trip, Julik takes a stop to empty his bladder and comes across a dead, rotting happy ant deer. When he calls everyone over to investigate, Isaac notices that the deer had not been killed by a hunter but some huge predator. They stopped by a lake to spend the night and set up camp. At night, while discussing why each of them listened to the camp, they hear some noises from the nearby bushes. Isa goes to check and finds a fox cub. They are all then sent to sleep in their tents. After most of them fall asleep, Daniel sneaks out of his tent and goes to the lake to smoke a cigarette. Aniela follows him soon after and they sit by the lake talking and smoking together. After they sleep together, Daniela goes back to her tent and Daniel starts using his mobile that he managed to sneak into the camp. As Daniel is using his cell phone, unaware of his surroundings, a gigantic man comes to him and starts dragging him away in his sleeping bag. When he struggles to get out, the giant smashes him against a tree repeatedly and kills him. In the morning, Isa tells Julia to wake the others up. Julia confirms her that Daniel is not in his tent. Isa asks everyone who saw Daniel last, upon which Analia tells her that she went to talk to him by the lake. Though Julik warns the group about the 6 rules of horror and insists they stay together as a group, Isa makes them split up into groups so that Zoisa and Julik go out in the woods to look for Daniel, while Bartek and Analia stay back at the campsite in case Daniel comes back. While wandering in the woods to look for Daniel, Zoisa and Julik find the giant's house and go inside to ask about Daniel. They notice that no one is living in the house and start searching it. They soon make their way into the cellar to find Daniel's mangled body inside. Just then the giant returns and walks down to the cellar. It slowly starts advancing towards them and they quickly start to get out the window. Isaac gets both the teenagers out and almost manages to get out herself. But then she hears a cell phone ringing in the pocket of Daniel's corpse and stays back to get it. The two wait outside for their counselor, but only get her ripped off head thrown out their feet and start to run. Back at their campsite, Amelia and Bartek sit talking about problems they face in life. During the conversation, Bartek looks over at Amelia to see a giant had driven a metal bar through her throat. Horrified, Bartek runs away and comes across a church in the woods and runs inside. While roaming the woods, Julik and Soysa also locate the house and make their way into it. At the door they are greeted by an old man who takes them into the house and asks what happened. They tell him about a deformed crooked man who killed their friends and they need to call for help, but the man tells them that he does not have a phone. Bartek explains the tragedy to a priest he finds in the church and asks them to call for help. The priest tells him there are no signals in the area and the landline wires have been cut due to violent storms. Bartek starts to cry and the priest tries to console him. Just then the telephone of the church starts to ring and Bartek realizes the priest had lied. Staring to look at him in confusion, the priest hits him on the head and knocks him out. Bartek later wakes up to find himself gagged and tied to a chair in the church with the priest sitting in front of him. The priest starts to insult Bartek's kind, saying they are careless and clingy people. Upon hearing some sounds outside, the priest goes outside to investigate. Outside, the priest encounters one of the giants who kills him in a very brutal way by putting him in a wood chipper. The giant then enters the church and looks around for Bartek, who had managed to untie himself and hide in a confession box. Back at the old man's house, the old man tells the teens the story of giants. They were twins, he tells him, who used to live with their mother happily alongside their dog until one fateful afternoon. Something fell from the sky after a huge explosion that afternoon and the twins ran to explore. They found a strange kind of rock and took it back home with them, where they kept it hidden under their bed. During the night the black fluid was released from the rock, which injured the bodies of the twins, making them start to act like demons. Their mother woke up in the morning to be horrified seeing her sons eating their dog in the basement. She then locked them up in the cellar and started bringing them raw animals from the forest to eat. The old man states that the mother tried to take care of her boys all her life, but she slowly lost her mind. After the death of their mother, the giants escaped the cellar and now roamed the forest like monsters. The old man tells Zoysia and Julik that they could stay with him in his house where they will be safe. But they are free to go out to seek help if they choose to, though it will be dangerous to wander the woods with the giants out there, and it would take them at least 2 days to get to the nearest village. Zoysia tells the man that they cannot wait while the others get butchered in the forest and go to seek help with Dalek. They decide to go back to the giant cellar and get Daniel's phone to call for help. Julik tries to distract the killer with some noise and Zoysia sneaks into the cellar and starts looking for Daniel's phone. But the giant finds her and grabs her by the throat. Julik comes from behind him and heroically stabs the giant. The giant throws Zoysia down, knocking her unconscious, and bites Julik's tongue off. Zoysia later wakes up to find herself chained up while Julik is lying there, gurgling blood with a knife in his stomach. Juliet requests Zoysia to end his agony. Seeing him suffering from the knife embedded in his abdomen, Zoysia takes hold of the knife and twists it to end this pain. She uses her knife to unchain herself and considers escaping, but then takes a machete from the room and instead decides to kill the giant. She goes upstairs, hearing one of the giants snoring on the bed. She carefully sneaks out of the cellar to the side of his bed and stabs him until he completely stops moving. Someone knocks at the old man's door and he pulls out a shotgun, thinking it's the giants and they must have found him and come to feast on him. The old man aims his shotgun at the door and shoots as someone barges into his home, to find that he had shot a harmless teen, Bartek, to death. A policeman drops a prostitute off in the force and is approached for help by Soysa. Noticing her distress, he gets her inside his police van and drives her away. While driving, the police van runs over something. The policeman gets off the car to see who has been run over by his van. Zoysia notices that it's one of the giant twins and shouts to call the policeman back. The policeman, not being able to hear Zoysia's warning, continues walking to the giant, who is playing dead, lying motionless in the middle of the road. When the officer gets dangerously close to him, the giant gets up from the road. The officer tries but fails to pull his pistol from his holster, and is split in half by the giant's axe. Zoysia, who was not able to get out of the back of the police van, manages to break the window and run to the driver's seat. After a few unsuccessful attempts, she is able to drive away, throwing the giant off the van, who had gotten on top of it to attack her. Crying, she runs over the giant numerous times and drives away once she is sure he has been killed. Later, 2 men are showing to be drunk and walking in the woods. They walk down the road to see a giant lying in the middle of it. The giant gets up from the road and his twin also wakes up at his bed having survived the stabbing, and stares at the police lights outside his house. If you like it, please like, subscribe, and press the bell, so you don't miss the next movie from Movie Shot.